Good morning, friends. Welcome back to our channel, Universal Agile and Scrum. We do these sessions once in 2 weeks, and this is our third video on Agile and Scrum. On this video, the plan is to go through the Scrum guide for PSPO and PSM exams. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to waste any of your time. I'm going to do this within 5 minutes to show you what's important for the exams. Here we go. Please subscribe to our channel. You can put your comments in the under this video to know more about our YouTube channel or our meetup group, or if you have any questions regarding PSPO, PSM, CSM, CSPO, or Scrum Guide. What I have in front of me is the Scrum Guide for the examinations, and what I'll be doing is I'll be going over this within 5 minutes, and these 5 minutes will be very important for you if you're preparing for the examinations. I prepared for the examinations myself, and I did crack them with high scores. So I didn't really take any help. So I would say you also do that. By self-study, you get to know many things, and you'll gain a lot of knowledge. The first page is basically animates of the authors. The second page is the contents. In the contents, if you see, you have things like purpose of this guide, definition of Scrum, use of Scrum, Scrum theory, the Scrum team, Scrum events, artifacts, how is transparency important in in Agile or Scrum. So, and then there's a lot of focus on definition of done. First thing first, definition of Scrum is important to understand what Scrum is, but may not be very important for the exam. One question they may ask in interviews is Scrum a framework or a methodology? It's framework within Agile methodology. So that's something people get confused with a lot of time. Whereas otherwise, Scrum is basically, you're trying to address complex problems adaptively, incrementally, with a rigid framework, and trying to deliver the highest possible value to the customer and client all the time. And it is this came up in early 1990s, but this Scrum guide was written in 2001 and 2002, if I'm not right. It's not a Scrum as such is not a process, but it's a rigid framework that can be employed, that can make your processes and techniques better, and it's easy to get results using Scrum instead of Kanban or any other Agile framework we have there. Scrum framework consists of few things. First thing is Scrum team, and Scrum team has multiple roles. We'll go through the roles in other part of this guide. And then there are few events which happen during Scrum implementation, that is sprint planning and sprint. We'll go through that in the guide. And there are a few artifacts and few rules that needs to be followed when you are implementing Scrum framework. Page number 4 is basically what are the uses of Scrum. Scrum can be used at many places, but again, it depends upon your organization, the level of Agile transformation that is happening in your organization. But for example, there are a few examples here, like wherever you are developing products and enhancements or releasing those products, any kind of cloud products or information systems, you can use Scrum, where you have multiple teams who work on the product. And the major place where it is effective is wherever you're trying to deliver a value which is iterative in nature and incremental in form. So that's Scrum is very effective where you're doing that. Scrum theory, empiricism is one word which you keep hearing it whenever you read about Agile. Empiricism is nothing but knowledge comes from practice, and you make decision based on that experience. Our parents keep telling that, they keep giving us knowledge that, hey, don't do that, don't do this, you'll hurt yourself, but we still try to do it. to gain experience. But whereas in Scrum, you actually follow what your parents say, in this case, what your early developers of Scrum or early Scrum teams tell you about what to do, what not to do. You blindly follow them because that comes from experience. The fifth page, it talks about the pillars of Scrum, that is transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Like transparency is very important in any software development. It doesn't delay information or any kind of decision making and approvals. Whereas inspection, it's like testing, but in waterfall, you test in functional unit testing, system integration testing, and UAT. Whereas in Scrum, you keep testing in every sprint. So there's a very frequent inspection which is happening with the use of multiple events within Scrum planning. And then adaptation is again the thing which I told you about experience and making those adjustments, taking help from the previous teams is what adaptation is about, without so that we don't deviate from the process. Again, as I said earlier, Scrum framework is a rigid one. Scrum values, Scrum values again, are 5 values which talk about commitment, courage, focus, openness, and respect. All these 5 values basically tell you, if you have these kind of values within your team, it's very easy to implement Scrum, and it's also easy to explore many other things. And success of the project depends upon the people who are using these values and embodied into their work culture and ethical work ethics. So these 5 Scrum values are important. In exam, you'll have 1 or 2 questions on Scrum values, definitely. Just remember, like PSPOs, CSM, all these exams are not situation based like PMA, ACP. These exams are purely Scrum guide based with little bit tweaks, but everything is in the Scrum guide. Within Scrum team, there are 3 roles: product owner, development team, Scrum master. Each of these roles have their own work or duties. There'll be a lot of questions on Scrum team. Like there'll be questions around what does product owner do, who manages the product backlog, who has right to cancel a sprint, how do you who ensures the product backlog is visible, who works with the customer, questions like that. uh, it is product owner in this case. If you see you have the duties here, they'll exactly copy paste these duties into options. Either if you can by heart, but I would suggest you to understand those roles and try to you know if you're not using Scrum, try to imagine Scrum. If you're using Scrum at work, then clearly look at the person who is doing the role and say, hey, that is right, that is wrong. Sometimes people go out of Scrum guide, so it's a rigid framework. You should be very rigid about it. And then again, few things around product owner: who can be product owner, what kind of role is product owner. All these details are in the Scrum guide for you to take a look at. Similarly, development team. So each role is explained, and the duties are in there. And again, things like what should be the ideal size. Like ideal size for a sprint or for Scrum team is a 3 to 12. So 9 is the best number people suggest, but that's not here. But 3 to 12 is the uh, ideal number. Like if you see here, there's a point that fewer than 3 development team, the decrease interaction results in smaller priority gains. If you have large team development teams, there's a lot of complexity. So it's always good to have the suggested number, like between 3 to 12, if you're running a Scrum framework, if you're running Scrum framework at your organization. And then Scrum Master, servant leadership. Questions, you may have questions around servant leadership, and then on his duties again. There'll be around 10 questions, and I mean easily in PSM and PSPO around these roles, these duties, and what kind of service Scrum Master can do to the development team, Scrum Master to the organization. So be perfect with these pages from 6 to 8. That definitely helps in the exam. There'll be 10 tight questions, 10 questions not situational, but tying it back where you need little thinking. Scrum events is next big thing. In Scrum events, you have the sprint, which is between which should be less than 4 weeks, but the suggested time is 2 weeks to 4 weeks, but it should be always less than a month. And at the end of the Scrum, you may have a usable potential increment, or you may not have it based on the decisions you take in the sprint review meeting. Within the sprint, you have 4 events: sprint planning, daily scrums, sprint review, and sprint retrospective majorly. And there is another event called development work. They call it development work. Some people call it refinement, product refinement. But that's ongoing. It's not like a separate event. But whereas sprint planning, daily scrums, sprint review, and sprint retrospective are events which happen during the sprint. Always remember, sprint planning, there are a lot of questions asked, again, around 20 questions asked on the events in the examinations. Like what happens in sprint planning, what happens in daily scrum, what happens in sprint review, what happens in sprint retrospective. Not just that, who are the participants, what kind of decisions are made, how much time is spent on it. Everything is in this Scrum guide, and it's a questions come from this guide itself. There'll be nothing outside this guide. And like if you see here, who can canceling a sprint, who can cancel the sprint, what happens when you cancel a sprint, and what happens to the things which are done, things which are not done. So those sort of things, are present in this page. And then on sprint planning, there are many things here. What can be done in this sprint? How is the work chosen? These all tie back to your sprint events. So I'm not going through each of these things here, but you need to read the Scrum guide and understand, okay, there are big chunk of questions which are going to come from this part of the document. Like in short, like in sprint, you have first sprint planning where you plan what are the user stories that needs to be tackled in the sprint. And then you have daily scrums to discuss what's done yesterday, what are you going to do today, if you have any impediments, so that the development team knows where you need help. During sprint planning, you will have a sprint lull. Okay, sorry that. After the daily scrums, you have at the end of the sprint, you have a sprint review where you discuss the product increment, and that product increment will get a go ahead. Or here you say it's a 4-hour meeting. It'll get a go ahead, or they say no, it's not ready to be released. So such kind of decisions happen here. Stakeholders are involved in this sprint review meeting. There's always this question where stakeholders collaborate during the sprint. Usually stakeholders collaborate all through the sprint, but they're primary attendees in sprint review meeting. Okay. And then after this, I mean, if you see here, it's nicely given there, like what all elements are included in sprint review. Go through each of them, and in the exams, it will be exact copy paste of one of these values in the options. After sprint review, you have sprint retrospective, and in sprint retrospective, there you are doing 3 things. You are inspecting the work which is done. You're identifying if there are any major problems, and you are creating a plan for implementing these improvements in the Scrum team going forward. So retrospective is basically, it's not a stopgap, it's a platform where you inspect yourself and create a plan and become better in the next sprint. Again, it works on empiricism foundation. These are the events, and then you got artigraphs again, under 20 questions from the artigraphs. Major artigraphs are product backlog, you got a sprint backlog, you also got increment. These are the 3 major artigraphs. Product backlog is the complete product backlog of all the user stories that are required to develop the product, whereas sprint backlog is backlog only for that particular sprint that needs to be done. And then you have increment. Increment is the solution which is done that needs to go into the release. An increment is basically nothing but the software development that is done in that sprint that needs to be pushed to production. As simple as that. And then the things around transparency, with role, with respect to work, with respect to articraft. That's something in there that is helpful. Last major thing, there'll be 3 to 5 questions on definition of done. What is definition of done? Who creates this definition of done? Is it organization level or is it team level? There'll be some confusing questions on this. So be thorough of this page. That will definitely help you. Yeah, that is it. Everything in PSM, CSM, PSPO, CSPO, everything comes from this Scrum guide. So if you know it by heart, you'll be rocking the exam. Even if you do not, try to understand what each of those things say. Always don't forget Scrum articles, Scrum roles, Scrum events, definition of done. There are 65 questions from this. If you're perfect with this, you'll definitely do very well in the exam. Yeah, this is it. I think I took more than 5 minutes, but that's still okay. And thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel and subscribe to our meetup to watch many more such videos and involve in the discussion. Thank you.